Here's what it looks like when our country engages with warmongers, when we tolerate NATO warships coming into our country, into our harbours. This was HMS Enterprise in Cork nearly 2 years ago now. The Irish Neutrality Campaign took a stand against it, as they have done against a whole series of NATO ships coming into our harbour. And we protested and we asked for peace, not war, for diplomacy, not war. You see the banner I myself had on that day. Now, the response of the state to that peaceful, lawful public assembly was to actually arrest me and to bully others to leave the area and stop the protest. You see this arrest here. On the same day that this took place, Shannon Watch Ireland, who maintain a constant vigil every month at Shannon Airport against the use of that airport by American warplanes and so on. But on the same day as this peaceful protest against NATO warships took place in Cork, Shannon Watch noted at least 3 NATO aircraft were abusing Irish neutrality today, they said in a statement. A German Air Force aircraft number 1406 arrived over Cork Airport from Bodø Air Base in Norway, circled over Cork for some time and then headed back towards Europe. A British RAF P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft, registration number ZP-805, had been loitering off the east coast of Ireland for several hours and made at least 2 entries into Dublin Bay, well within Irish sovereign airspace. US Air Force BE-20 executive type jet landed at Shannon about noon, coming from Frankfurt, and took off again 2 hours later. This happened in just one day. And it is an occurrence that's almost daily. There are these overflights of our airspace by all the NATO powers, and continuing a stream of their ships coming into our harbours. To remind you, here is a scene from the Consultative Forum on International Security, really on neutrality, held last summer. You can see debate here was non-existent. The whole exercise was a setup, but the series of consultations they held really exposed the lie, because overwhelmingly people came out loudly proclaiming to defend our policy of neutrality. Now we see in more recent weeks there's direct, no longer hidden, but open demands by all the government parties that what is called the triple lock be removed. The triple lock was agreed prior to the Nice Treaty in order to entice people in Ireland to vote for this treaty on the second run. It had earlier been rejected. And a protocol was agreed which said that Irish Army would not be deployed overseas without 3 factors happening. 1, approval by the UN Security Council or General Assembly. 2, approval of Dáil Éireann, and 3, government approval. That's the 3 factors which they call the triple lock. Now government parties want to remove that, and the element they want to remove is the involvement of United Nations. Now, there has been no secret of the fact that government wants us to take part in the battle groups formations that the European Union are putting together these days. They want us to engage in military enterprise, all in the name of peace, they say, overseas under probably EU and joint NATO leadership. That's all it would be. So they want us to be free to do this, and terribly say that we can't leave our neutrality and our participation rather in international peacekeeping. We can't leave it subject to the United Nations. So we have to be conscious of these factors. Now, whilst I was arrested on that quayside in Cork, an interesting thing about this is that I was charged with, not with unlawful assembly or other Public Order Act or anything like that. I was charged with trespass nonetheless, a very obscure charge based on that I was walking, they said, on the curtilage of a building which happens to be across the river channel from where we were. So it's a really obscure charge, but interestingly, 2 weeks ago in Dublin, you had another British warship in port, the HMS Penzance, and I know there were a Republican socialist group engaged in protest, quite rightly so, against the presence of that NATO ship in Dublin. And lo and behold, 3 of them were arrested, also held overnight for 24 hours, brought into the CCJ court in Dublin the following morning, and charged with trespass. So this seems to be the preferred current method of the state to suppress what is legitimate protest. People have a constitutional right and a right under countless international agreements on human rights to peaceful public assembly, to express our opinions and so on. And if we object to the presence of warships and our state itself being dragged into be part of the warmongering which is taking place, then we need to be very careful, because next thing we'll find, young Irish people are being recruited and sent off to bring peace to the world at the point of a rifle. Or, and you've seen this old graphic where the United States is delivering peace by dropping bombs on people, which of course is exactly the tragedy that's been unfolding in Gaza for the Palestinian people for the last going on 2 months. Criminal activity. So we also need to be alert to the fact that the use of this obscure legislation for Gardaí, so it's extraordinary when Gardaí themselves will go to the extent of telling lies, and that they would use such obscure laws of trespass to stop a peaceful public assembly. So now we're in the context that more draconian laws are being enacted in the guise of hate speech, in the guise of censorship of media, which give powers of search, all kinds of things. We're moving into a state which is increasingly dictatorial, where the curtailment of normal liberties are being removed left, right and centre, at the same time as we're being dragged out of our neutrality and in favour of war, because that's what it is. We're not neutral, then we're in favour of war. So, Liverdol, Shaka Nation, Gormagif.